Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at this incredible stack of sources today, basically to map out the invisible systems that dictate our world.
Yeah, it's a fascinating batch of material.
It is. And our mission today is to really understand the mechanics here. Like, how does society decide who gets elevated to hero status? Or, who gets locked out by a 500-kilometer trench? And honestly, how do you actually survive when the infrastructure around you completely flatlines?
And to really grasp this, you have to understand that these aren't just isolated events, right? Like the way a society brands a street dog and the way global superpowers fight over an energy pipeline, they're driven by the exact same human need. It's all about controlling narratives and resources.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, so I'm actually shifting the visual backdrop behind me to a vibrant, kind of chaotic street corner in São Paulo right now.
Oh, I like that.
Because understanding how you engineer a cultural symbol, it really starts right there on the pavement.
Okay, yeah, let's look at Brazil. So you have a nation of, 213 million people?
Roughly, yeah.
And right now, their most unifying cultural icon isn't some legendary soccer player or like a famous samba musician. It's a dog.
Specifically, the caramello.
Yes, the caramel. For anyone listening who hasn't been to Brazil, these are just the generic beige street mutts that are absolutely everywhere down there.
They are ubiquitous.
They really are. And what is so fascinating in the research is the psychological baggage these dogs used to carry. I mean, they were literally the poster children for something called the mongrel complex, or complexo de vira-lata.
Which is just a brilliant sociological concept.
Right.
Yeah, the phrase was actually coined by the playwright Nelson Rodrigues. This was way back after Brazil suffered a really devastating loss in the 1950 World Cup.
Oh, wow. So it goes way back.
It does. He used the street mutt as this metaphor for a deep-seated sense of national inferiority.
Wow.
It was this pervasive cultural belief that Brazil, being this mixed-race developing nation, was inherently lesser than European or North American countries. So the muck was literally a symbol of shame.
But flash forward to today, and it has completely flipped. It's become this massive badge of pride.
Yeah, it really started turning around recently.
Right, around 2019, the internet basically decided that these caramello dogs represent the true soul of Brazil more accurately than anything else.
More than soccer, more than samba.
Exactly. And the cultural saturation right now is just unbelievable. I mean, Diego Freitas, the Brazilian director, he just wrapped a Netflix movie starring a literal rescued street dog named Amendoin.
Which translates to peanut, I think?
Yeah. Yes, Peanut. And these dogs were also prominently featured in a recent Bruno Mars music video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And looking ahead to the 2025 Carnival, the São Clemente Samba School isn't just doing some subtle nod. They are building giant foam caramello costumes to march through the streets.
That's amazing.
Right. It's to highlight animal abandonment.
But here's where we really need to look at the underlying mechanics, because this wasn't just, organic internet magic.
Right. It never is.
Exactly. The caramello literally became a registered trademark because of a highly calculated corporate engine.
Yes, the corporate push.
Yeah, the dog food brand pedigree, they identified this cultural undercurrent and basically weaponized it for a marketing campaign. They essentially reverse-engineered legitimacy.
Okay, let's unpack how they actually pulled that off, because it is kind of genius.
It really is.
So pedigree started by having a Brazilian superstar try to enter her personal mutt into a high-end, purebred dog show. And they knew with absolute certainty that the dog would be rejected by the judges.
Because it's a mutt.
Exactly.
And, the resulting public outrage was exactly the fuel they needed. Once people were angry, pedigree stepped in with the solution.
Classic marketing.
Right. They funded the largest canine genetic research project ever conducted on a mixed-breed dog.
Wow.
Yeah, they even created their own kennel club, the Camelú Club, complete with official DNA-based pedigree certificates for street dogs.
That is wild.
And they pushed so hard that they eventually forced the FCI, which is the global governing body for purebred dogs, to officially recognize and accept these mutts into their competitions.
That's a huge shift.
It is. The campaign was so successful that the caramello actually became the most adopted type of dog in all of Brazil.
Okay, but I have to push back on that last point a little bit.
Sure.
Because when you look at the reports from volunteers who were actually working on the ground in São Paulo and Rio, they say the shelters are still absolutely overflowing with these beige mutts.
Right.
Like millions of them are still on the street. So is this corporate narrative actually failing in the real world? It kind of feels like we just slapped a fancy DNA certificate on a problem and called it solved.
Well, actually, I wouldn't call it a failure, but rather a perfect example of the lag between cultural engineering and systemic reality.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you can change a symbol overnight with a viral campaign,
Yeah.
right? Or a Netflix deal.
True.
But changing the physical infrastructure of a country like funding spay and neuter programs, building better shelters, shifting the daily behavior of millions of families, that takes decades.
Wow, okay.
So we fall in love with the newly minted symbol, but we still kind of ignore the physical reality of the actual animal starving on the street.
That makes a lot of sense. And, the tragedy of elevating a symbol is that it often obscures the complex reality underneath it.
Absolutely.
And that dynamic works in reverse, too, because right now we are seeing society rapidly dismantle a monumental symbol.
Yes, a very significant one.
And before we dive into this next part, it is really, really important to state for you listening that when we look at these investigations, we are strictly reading the raw journalistic reporting.
Exactly.
We aren't taking a political stance.
Yeah.
We aren't litigating the past. We're just impartially looking at the facts documented in these recent sources.
That's right. Because we are talking about the severe sexual abuse allegations surrounding the legendary labor leader, Cesar Chavez.
Yeah. And the details coming out of the recent New York Times investigation, alongside Maria Hinojosa's Latino USA audio documentary, they are profoundly disturbing.
They are very heavy.
Dolores Huerta, who famously co-founded the farm worker movement alongside Chavez, she has finally broken her decades-long silence.
Which is a massive deal.
It is. She went on the record stating that she was assaulted twice by Chavez. And the reporting details how she actually had to hide 2 resulting pregnancies under loose ponchos while she was continuing to work alongside him.
And the investigative scope goes far beyond a single tragic instance, too.
Right.
The sources detail accounts from several other women within the movement, like Ana Maria recounted an assault involving a yoga mat.
Yeah.
And Deborah Rojas came forward with an allegation that she was assaulted by him when she was just 12 years old.
Just 12 years old. It's horrifying.
The trauma documented here is immense, and the institutional reaction has been almost immediate.
Right. We are literally watching a legacy being dismantled piece by piece in real time.
Yeah.
Like in Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass is moving to officially replace Cesar Chavez Day, which falls on March 31st, with a broader Farm Workers Day.
Wow.
And Supervisor Hilda Solis is actively pushing motions to strip his name from public schools, museums, and street signs.
The physical markers of his legacy are vanishing.
Exactly. Out in the community, statues are literally being tied up in trash bags, and historic murals are being painted over or defaced.
It's a complete reckoning.
But here is the real tension in all of this. Dolores Huerta herself insists that despite the horrific abuse she personally endured, the massive achievements of the farm worker movement are still valid and must be protected.
Right.
So how do you even reconcile that? How do you as a citizen separate the undeniable good of a movement from the devastating reality of its founder?
Well, this raises an important question about how we record history, honestly.
How so?
We have this dangerous habit of taking a sprawling collective struggle, one that involves thousands of everyday people, and we balance its entire worth on the shoulders of one charismatic figurehead.
Right, we want a hero.
Exactly. We build a monument to a man instead of a monument to a movement.
Yeah.
And when the man inevitably falls, especially under the weight of such horrific actions, society's first instinct is to assume the entire cause was a lie.
Which is what we're seeing.
But Huerta is asking the public to separate the flawed, destructive architect from the vital architecture of the movement itself.
Which is incredibly hard to do. And, the brutal irony here is that by focusing so heavily on the dismantling of Chavez the symbol, we are sort of losing sight of the exact people that movement was fighting for.
The migrant workers.
Yes, because today, the physical movement of those exact same people is being criminalized and blocked on a scale that is genuinely hard to comprehend.
Oh, the global infrastructure surrounding migration right now isn't just cracking, it is actively weaponizing itself against the vulnerable.
It really is.
We are seeing this synchronized hardening of borders across multiple continents.
Just look at the policies going into effect right now. The U.S. State Department is rolling out a new rule on April 2nd.
Right, the visa bond.
Yes. Citizens from 12 specific countries, and this includes places like Nicaragua, Cambodia, Mongolia, and Mozambique, they're going to be forced to pay a $15,000 visa bond just to enter the country.
It's unbelievable.
$15,000. I mean, that isn't a security measure. That is literally a wealth tax on movement. And it trickles down to these devastating encounters on the ground. Like, the reporting highlights the story of a 5-year-old Ecuadorian boy named Liam Conejo.
Such a heartbreaking story.
It is. He and his father were intercepted and detained by federal agents right outside Liam's elementary school in Minnesota.
Wow.
They were denied asylum, and now they face rapid deportation.
And, if you look south, the exact same systemic blockades are being constructed, just with different materials.
Right.
In South America, Chile's president, Jose Antonio Cost, is advancing this massive project to build a 500-kilometer border shield along their northern frontier with Peru.
A 500-kilometer shield.
Yes, we are talking about digging massive trenches in the desert, erecting physical walls, and deploying military-grade surveillance tech.
That's massive.
And the primary target of this operation isn't a rival army or something. It's irregular migration, largely driven by Venezuelans who are fleeing the total economic collapse of their own country.
But, I mean, do 500-kilometer trenches actually stop human desperation?
Historically, no.
Right. I look at these massive infrastructure projects, and it feels like dropping a boulder into a raging river. You aren't stopping the water. You are just forcing it to carve a more dangerous path around the rock.
That is a great analogy.
Because if the house behind you is on fire, a wall in front of you isn't going to stop you from jumping.
That is the perfect way to look at it. A trench is just a localized physical reaction to a macro-level systemic failure.
Exactly.
It doesn't solve the fire, it just traps the smoke.
Which brings up a terrifying scenario, honestly. Because fleeing a collapsed country is one thing, but what happens when you are physically trapped inside a nation where the essential grid has completely flatlined?
It's a nightmare.
Let's talk about Cuba. The systemic failure there has reached such a critical threshold that Costa Rica recently shut down its embassy in Havana entirely.
Just completely pulled out.
Yes, specifically citing human rights concerns.
And, I'm going to change the visual behind me to a pitch black cityscape for this.
Well, fitting.
Because inside Cuba right now, the daily reality is staggering. Our sources indicate there has been virtually no steady fuel supply since January 9th.
No fuel since January.
Practically none.
You literally have taxi drivers sleeping in their vehicles overnight, just waiting in endless lines for an allowance of 5 gallons of gas.
5 gallons? That's nothing.
It's nothing. People are physically pushing their cars down the street to conserve what little fuel they have. Families are dragging charcoal and firewood up to the rooftops of their apartment buildings to cook dinner because there is zero electricity to power a stove.
It's like stepping back in time.
They're pulling decades-old bicycles out of scrap heaps just to get to work.
Yeah.
And honestly, I have to say, the language the outside world uses to describe this really bothers me.
How so?
Well, we watch documentaries and we call the Cuban people resilient for engineering solar panels out of spare parts.
Nah.
But isn't calling them resilient just a convenient psychological trick so the rest of the world doesn't have to look at a massive humanitarian failure?
It absolutely is. Resilience is often just a romanticized word for systemic abandonment.
That's exactly what it is.
It shifts the burden of survival entirely onto the victim. But to truly understand why a mother in Havana has to cook on a roof with firewood, you have to look at how global systems are interconnected.
Right.
The energy market is not a stockpile. It is a circulatory system.
Yeah.
And right now, the main arteries are being severed thousands of miles away in the Middle East.
So let's trace the actual anatomy of that failure because it is terrifyingly fragile.
It really is a Jenga tower.
It starts with an Israeli strike on the South Pars gas field. And if you aren't familiar with South Pars, this isn't some minor local reserve.
Yeah, not at all.
It is the single largest natural gas field in the entire world. It holds roughly 51 trillion cubic meters of gas.
51 trillion.
And it physically straddles the maritime border between Iran and Qatar. So striking it is quite literally throwing a match into the world's primary fuel tank.
And the blowback was immediate. Iran retaliated by launching missiles toward Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial complex and targeting Saudi refineries.
Wow.
And the instant that happened, the global circulatory system panicked. Worldwide, oil prices spiked by 60%, suddenly hitting $118 a barrel.
And the real choke point here is the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
20% of the entire world's oil supply has to pass through that one narrow strip of water. And right now, it is effectively blocked by the conflict.
Just completely jammed.
It is causing such panic that a coalition of European nations, spearheaded by Emmanuel Macron in France, along with the UK and Germany, is desperately trying to intervene and force the strait open.
Though interestingly, Spain was notably excluded from that coalition.
Yeah, which is an interesting detail.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the political rhetoric is just throwing gasoline on the fire.
Always.
Donald Trump has publicly warned that the United States could completely obliterate the South Pars field if Iran continues its aggression.
Even while he's claiming the U.S. had absolutely zero prior knowledge of the initial Israeli strike.
Right. And at the exact same time, the U.S. Defense Secretary is urgently requesting an additional $200 billion just to restock munitions.
It's just a massive web of paranoia.
It really is. You even have the FBI actively investigating a former agent, Joe Kent, for allegedly leaking classified intelligence that suggested Iran wasn't actually an imminent threat in the first place.
So much chaos.
And in the middle of all this, you have a Russian ship, the Seahorse, sailing under a Hong Kong flag, desperately ferrying 200,000 barrels of diesel toward Cuba just to keep the lights on.
But that shipment only covers about 10 days of consumption.
10 days.
Yeah, this is what it looks like when macro systems collide. A missile gets fired in the Persian Gulf, and the immediate ripple effect dictates whether a taxi driver in Havana can afford to buy dinner or whether a commuter in Berlin can afford to heat their apartment.
Everything is tethered together.
Everything.
And, with the macro systems failing on such a massive scale from the energy grid to international borders, you would think people could turn to something like global sports for an escape.
You would hope so.
But even the 2026 World Cup is being hijacked by these exact same geopolitical breakdowns.
Yeah, the geopolitical map is literally redrawing the tournament brackets right now.
It's crazy.
Because of the ongoing conflict and the blocked shipping lanes, the Iranian Football Federation is outright refusing to play any of their scheduled World Cup matches on U.S. soil.
Wow.
Yeah, they are currently in deep negotiations with FIFA president Gianni Infantino to relocate their games entirely to Mexico.
And Mexico's newly elected president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has stated she is open to hosting them.
Right.
But Mexico City is dealing with its own systemic paralysis.
Oh, big time.
Right now, thousands of Mexican teachers from the CNTE union, which is this massive, incredibly powerful labor union, they are engaged in a 72-hour strike.
Yeah, in the capital.
They have completely taken over the Zocalo, which is essentially the political and cultural beating heart of Mexico City.
And the Angel of Independence monument, too.
Yes. They are demanding better pensions, and they are openly threatening to shut down the massive opening match of the World Cup if the government doesn't meet their demands.
So on the macro level, you have nation-states arguing over missile strikes and tournament logistics.
Yeah.
But what is truly fascinating is watching how everyday people react when the big systems fail. They start building their own microsystems.
They find a hustle.
Exactly.
Just look at the shadow economy exploding around the World Cup in the U.S. Airbnb is aggressively throwing money at homeowners in New England to open up their spare bedrooms for the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
In places like Providence, Rhode Island, the platform is offering up to $750 just to list your apartment and tossing out $2,000 bonuses for referrals.
That's a lot of cash.
And residents are jumping at it, completely ignoring the fact that the city of Providence is concurrently trying to pass a new $50 mandatory insurance fee on short-term rentals.
The government tries to regulate, and the people just bypass it to get their piece of the pie.
Exactly. It is a profound survival instinct.
Yeah.
When the external world feels entirely out of your control, human beings instinctively pivot to the things they can control.
Right. Their own homes, their own income, their own physical health.
Which brings up a really optimistic data point from the research, actually. While all this chaos is swirling, Lionel Messi just scored his 900th career goal. And he achieved that milestone 100 games faster than Cristiano Ronaldo did.
That is just a stunning testament to physical longevity.
And controlling your own internal system.
Yeah. And speaking of internal systems, the sources highlighted a massive, fascinating study of 160,000 people focusing on cognitive health.
Oh, the diet study.
Yeah. It revealed that adhering strictly to the DSH diet, which was originally designed to stop hypertension, or the Mediterranean diet, has an incredible impact on the brain.
Really?
Yeah. Pumping your system full of olive oil, fresh fruits, and cold water fish like salmon actively protects your memory and significantly prevents the onset of dementia.
That's huge.
It is a powerful reminder that while we can't control the Strait of Hormuz, we can control our own cellular infrastructure.
Which naturally brings us to the ultimate metric. I mean, in a world defined by $15,000 visa bonds, exploding gas fields, and defaced monuments, where are people actually happy?
It's a great question.
The newly released World Happiness Report has some surprising answers. Finland, predictably, took the #1 spot for the 9th consecutive time.
They always do.
But the real shocker is Costa Rica. They just rocketed to #4 on the global index, setting the highest ranking ever achieved by any Latin American country.
That is a staggering contrast.
Right.
You have the United States, which is the epicenter of global wealth and military power, falling to number 23 on the list.
Yeah, the sources said that was heavily dragged down by the severe discontent and anxiety of people under 25.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Costa Rica, a country that literally just had to close its embassy in neighboring Cuba because the regional systems are collapsing, is thriving.
There is a massive lesson there for you listening. The nations demanding $15,000 deposits or digging 500-kilometer trenches in the desert are not the ones harboring the happiest populations.
No, they aren't.
Costa Rica operates on the philosophy of pura vida, pure life.
Yeah.
It is a cultural framework that prioritizes community, connection, simplicity, and immediate well-being over endless, stressful systemic expansion. They aren't trying to control the world, they're just living in it.
It really suggests that the strongest architecture in a society isn't made of concrete walls or global supply chains. It is the psychological resilience of the community itself.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Well, we have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started by looking at how a discarded Brazilian street dog was genetically and culturally engineered into a certified national treasure.
Right.
We watched the painful, real-time dismantling of Cesar Chavez's monumental legacy. We traced the physical anatomy of global collapse, from the targeted gas fields of the Middle East straight to the pitch-black rooftops of Havana.
And we found pockets of control and joy, too. From the World Cup, Airbnb hustle, to the simple, undeniable beauty of Messi's 900th goal.
Exactly. We have mapped out the fragile circulatory systems of our modern world. We've seen how quickly the symbols we worship can fall, and how fast the systems we rely on can choke.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to carry with you. If a street dog can be deliberately manufactured into a symbol of national pride, and a towering historical legacy can be taken apart overnight, what deeply held symbol in your own life right now is actually completely manufactured? And what invisible system are you taking for granted today that might not survive until tomorrow? Keep questioning the architecture around you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.